To build your house upon the rock is not a command directed at wood and stone, nor at plans drawn by human hands. It is a call to establish life upon a foundation that does not move when circumstances change, when appearances threaten, or when the winds of uncertainty rise. The house is consciousness, and the rock is spiritual understanding. The rock represents spiritual understanding rather than outer belief or ritual, because belief can exist without transformation, and ritual can be practiced without awareness. A person may believe many truths and perform many sacred acts, yet still remain inwardly unstable when circumstances change. Belief often depends on the mind agreeing with ideas, while ritual depends on repetition of forms, but neither guarantees that consciousness has been anchored in something unchanging. Spiritual understanding is different in nature. It is not borrowed from teachings, nor sustained by emotion, but arises from direct inner recognition. Outer belief can be shaken by new information, opposing opinions, or unexpected events. When belief alone is the foundation, fear enters as soon as evidence seems to contradict what is believed. Ritual, likewise, can become mechanical, offering comfort without depth. When conditions are favorable, belief and ritual seem sufficient, but when pressure comes, they reveal their limitations. The storms of life do not challenge words or practices, they test awareness. Spiritual understanding is not something the intellect accumulates. It unfolds when thought yields to inner stillness and allows truth to be perceived rather than reasoned out. This understanding does not argue or defend itself, it simply stands. It does not rise and fall with circumstances because it is rooted in what does not change. When awareness rests in this understanding, reactions soften, fear loses authority, and stability appears without effort. The rock is therefore not a concept about truth, but an inward state of consciousness aligned with truth. It is the difference between knowing about light and living in light. When this understanding is present, actions become quieter, choices more intuitive, and trust less dependent on visible outcomes. Life is no longer held together by effort, but sustained by an inner certainty that does not need constant reinforcement. Ritual may point toward this understanding, and belief may prepare the way for it, but neither can replace it. The rock is reached only when attention turns inward and rests there long enough for truth to reveal itself. From this foundation, life is not merely practiced spiritually, but lived from a depth that remains firm regardless of outer movement. True security is found in inner awareness of divine law, not in changing human conditions, because everything that appears in the outer world is subject to fluctuation. Circumstances rise and fall, relationships change, health varies, and material structures shift with time. When security is sought in these forms, life becomes a constant effort to protect, maintain, and control what can never truly be fixed. Anxiety then becomes a natural companion, not because danger is always present, but because the foundation itself is unstable. Inner awareness of divine law introduces a different sense of safety, one that does not depend on prediction or control. Divine law is not influenced by economic cycles, personal mistakes, or human opinions. It operates silently and consistently, sustaining harmony at a level deeper than appearances. When consciousness becomes aware of this law, fear begins to dissolve, not because outer conditions improve, but because trust is transferred from the visible to the invisible. Human conditions often give the illusion of security. A stable income, good reputation, strong body, or supportive environment can create confidence. Yet this confidence remains conditional. The moment any of these change, uncertainty arises. Inner awareness, however, does not attach security to what is possessed or experienced. It recognizes that supply, order, and life itself are expressions of an ever-present source, not products of circumstance. This awareness is not cultivated through affirmation or mental reassurance, but through quiet receptivity. In stillness, thought relaxes its dependence on outcomes and opens to a deeper sense of order already in operation. As this awareness grows, reactions to outer events soften. Challenges are met with clarity instead of panic, and decisions are made from insight rather than fear. Security grounded in divine law does not remove responsibility, but it removes the burden of self-protection. One acts wisely without desperation, plans without anxiety, and works without believing that everything depends on personal effort. There is a growing recognition that life is upheld by something greater than human strength or foresight. When this inner awareness becomes the foundation, peace is no longer postponed until conditions improve. It is present even while conditions unfold. Life is lived with steadiness, not because nothing can go wrong, but because nothing essential is threatened. This is the security that does not erode with time or circumstance, because it is rooted in what eternally governs all expression. Storms symbolize the trials that test the foundation of thought and consciousness, because difficulty has a way of exposing what quietly supports our life. In calm seasons, it is easy to assume strength, clarity, and faith, but pressure reveals whether these qualities are rooted in deep understanding or merely supported by favorable conditions. Storms arrive as illness, loss, conflict, disappointment, or uncertainty, and their purpose is not punishment but revelation. When thought has been built upon appearances, storms create confusion and fear. The mind searches for something to blame or control, and energy is spent resisting what seems threatening. In these moments, it becomes clear that reliance was placed on circumstances behaving predictably. The shaking is not caused by the storm itself, but by the instability of the foundation beneath consciousness. If thought is founded upon spiritual understanding, storms are experienced differently. They may still be intense, but they do not dismantle inner stability. There is an underlying calm that remains untouched. Even while emotions rise and circumstances shift, this calm is not indifference, but awareness that life is governed by something deeper than the present disturbance. The storm then becomes a moment of clarification rather than collapse. Trials also reveal unconscious beliefs that have gone unquestioned. Fear of loss, dependence on approval, attachment to outcomes, and trust in personal ability alone are often hidden until challenged. Storms bring these assumptions to the surface where they can be released. In this sense, trials serve as instruments of purification, stripping away what cannot endure and leaving only what is real. A foundation built on spiritual understanding does not seek to escape storms, but meets them with stillness. Instead of asking how to remove the difficulty, attention turns inward to what remains unshaken. This inward turning allows wisdom to emerge, often leading to actions that are simpler, more direct, and more effective than those driven by fear. Over time, storms lose their power to intimidate because their role is understood. They are no longer seen as threats to life, but as tests of alignment. Each one strengthens the foundation by confirming what is dependable and discarding what is not. Consciousness grows steadier, not because storms cease to appear, but because their ability to overthrow inner balance has ended. Building upon the rock requires daily inner discipline, silence, and receptivity, because spiritual stability is not sustained by occasional inspiration, but by consistent inward alignment. Without this discipline, attention naturally drifts back to appearances, personal reasoning, and emotional reactions. The outer world is loud and persuasive, constantly inviting thought to identify with fear, urgency, and control. Inner discipline gently, but firmly redirects awareness away from these distractions and back to the source of clarity. Silence is not merely the absence of sound, it is the quieting of mental activity that insists on explaining, judging, and fixing. In this silence, thought releases its demand to manage life and becomes receptive to deeper insight. This receptivity cannot be forced. It unfolds as the mind relaxes its grip and allows understanding to rise from within rather than be constructed intellectually. Through silence, awareness becomes sensitive to guidance that is subtle yet precise. Daily practice is essential because consciousness easily reverts to habit. Fear-based thinking, attachment to outcomes, and identification with personal effort reassert themselves unless gently dissolved through regular inward turning. This practice does not require long periods or rigid methods. Even brief moments of stillness, consistently honored, create a shift in awareness that gradually becomes natural and continuous. Receptivity is the heart of this process. It is a willingness to be taught inwardly rather than instructed outwardly. When receptivity is present, solutions emerge without strain, and insight appears without struggle. One learns to wait rather than rush, to listen rather than assert. This waiting is active, not passive. It is an alert openness that trusts understanding to reveal itself at the right moment. Through daily inner discipline, life begins to move from effort to flow. Decisions are no longer forced through anxiety, but arise from quiet certainty. Challenges are approached with patience rather than resistance. The foundation strengthens, not because conditions are controlled, but because consciousness remains anchored. This way of building does not produce dramatic spiritual displays. Its fruit is steadiness, discernment, and peace. Over time, silence ceases to be a practice and becomes a state of being. Receptivity becomes natural, and discipline transforms into joy. The house stands firm not through struggle, but through continual alignment, with an inner presence that sustains without noise or effort. A house built on the shifting sands of fear, ego, or material reliance cannot endure, because these foundations have no permanence. Fear is rooted in anticipation of loss, ego is sustained by comparison and control, and material reliance depends upon